Fisherman's Post. More fish, more often.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fisherman's Post Saltwater Podcast Series. This episode is titled Fall Surf Fishing with Live Bait on Oak Island. And I'm going to be joining Wayne Ayers of Real Good Surf Fishing there on Oak Island. And we're going to be talking about fall species, fall bait options. We're going to be talking about when and where, gear and techniques. And then we're going to finish by talking about what you might be doing wrong, what you might be doing right. And that'll be our conversation. My name is Gary Hurley of Fisherman's Post. Fisherman's Post has been serving the saltwater fishing community since 2003, bringing you fishing reports, fishing information, fishing tournaments, fishing schools, and in the latest and greatest chapter of the Fisherman's Post Saltwater Podcast Series. And it is in this podcast series that we reach out to our captain and guide friends from up and down the North Carolina coast and ask them to share with us their insights, their knowledge on how to catch more fish more often, albeit the higher goal is to give you knowledge, to give you encouragement, to give you confidence so that you grab your family and friends and get out on the water, spending more time together more often. And to join me in this mission is my podcast partner, Billy Thorpe of Thorpe Creative. Billy, so happy to be talking to you, bringing up another episode.
What is up, Gary? Good to see you again, man. Super excited to be talking to Wayne today about some surf fishing. So always down to learn how to surf fish because, as everyone knows, I don't have a boat. So there we go. It's going to teach me a little something about finding some fish.
Man, how many people have ever showed up to that pity party? I'm wondering about the guest list for that pity party.
Nobody. There's no one. Me. I show up consistently to this pity party, and no one wants to join me, which I can't blame them. But whatever. Whatever. It is what it is.
Well, yes, Billy, we are talking surf fishing. I'm excited to talk surf fishing. Come September, Fisherman's Post moves away from boat tournaments. We move into our fall surf fishing tournaments. Love the surf fishing community and very excited to be talking to Wayne about fall surf fishing, live bait on Oak Island.
Hey, man, it's going to be an exciting episode, and really making this all possible is our great sponsor, so I want to make sure I give them a shout-out really quickly. We got RA Hitches, trailers, bike racks, and much more, so anything you need to get geared out for your truck or for your SUV, these guys, they got it, man. They have a fantastic selection online, so be sure to reach out to them and see what they have and go to Raleigh and get it in the Raleigh Apex area there to RA Hitch. Chris and his team do a phenomenal job with the outdoorsmen, helping them get geared up. So we appreciate those guys sponsoring the show. And then also Marine Warehouse Center has been with us from early on and just huge supporters of the show. So we appreciate those guys. I got a quick message from them, and we'll be right back.
At Marine Warehouse, we have everything. We have new boats, we have parts, we have accessories, new trailers, we have a complete service department with highly trained technicians. Anything you need to get out on the water, we have it.
At Marine Warehouse Center, as we've grown over the last few years, now have a large section of marine supplies from start to finish for all your boating needs.
What I love about this region is to be able to get out on the water, and also we love to be able to get you out on the water.
The best part of working at Marine Warehouse is being able to get involved with the customers and share a love for the water.
Boom! The best boat dealership on the East Coast.
And they mean it. They are certainly part of the boating and fishing community, not just selling to the boating and fishing community, man. I'm fans of them, whether it's sales, service, or parts, man. Those guys, can help you out.
Yeah, man. Not only do they sponsor the podcast, but they're super supportive of boat shows and tackle shows, and also a ton of Fisherman's Post tournaments. So, man, they are really more than just a sponsor of this show, but really supporters of the fishing community. So we really appreciate those guys. So go check them out. They have 2 locations, one in Wilmington and one in the Charleston area. And they also ship worldwide, which I learned that a while back. I had mentioned it. But yeah, if you're anywhere you're listening, we have listeners from over 30 different countries. So be sure to reach out to them, and they'll ship you a boat anywhere in the world, which is pretty crazy to me.
I wonder how many of our podcast viewers and listeners would have to buy a boat from them for Terrell to be so busy he wouldn't have time to call me and try to lay another fish joke on me. I wonder what that number is.
I don't know.
Because we haven't reached it yet. I mean, they are as busy as they can be over there with good reason. They're busy for good reason. but yet Terrell somehow every week still has time to call me on my cell, morning, noon, or night. That doesn't seem to matter. Whenever he feels like it, he just gives me a ring and says, "Man, this one's going to be a killer."
Well, I'm excited to hear this week's joke from Terrell, not from Gary, from Terrell. I'm excited.
To be clear, this is Terrell's joke. This is not Gary's joke. Why did the restaurants have to throw the clams out?
You got me.
They were past their shell by date.
Okay, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good one. It's not sound effect worthy, but it was pretty good. I like that one. Well done,
You
Gary.
were too kind.
I mean, Terrell.
You were too kind. Yeah, that's not. Gary gets nothing for that other than answering the phone.
Well, Gary, let's take care of some business. Speaking of answering the phone, taking care of business. If you want to support Gary and I personally as creators and podcasters, feel free to go to buymeacoffee.com/Fisherman's Post, and you can buy us a coffee. If you're a business owner and you want to support the podcast, feel free to reach out to me, Billy@fishermanspost.com, for sponsorship opportunities. And speaking of sponsors, I'm really excited to announce our newest sponsor, Gary, which is Manscaped. As you can see, I'm wearing the shirt. For you guys who don't know what that is, they provide some amazing male grooming tools, and they sent us the Lawnmower 4.0. So we're one of the first people, Gary. I don't know if you knew this, one of the first people to be able to use this product and test it out. And I'm not a really hairy dude, but it's amazing. It's got a little flashlight on there. And it also has, yeah, it is. It's awesome. And it also has wireless charging as well. So you can, I don't know if this is meant to shave your face and your nether regions, but it'll take care of both if you want to. And I use it for my face, maybe for the other part, but I'm not going to disclose that on this podcast because that's really weird.
Man, it is taking all the discipline I have to hold back on low-hanging fruit, cheap jokes. But I want you to know, Billy, I knew we had this sponsor. I too am excited for this sponsor. And so I usually have two questions for the captain, guide, guest for the talent of the show. But I actually have a Manscaped question. We'll call it truth or fiction. I don't know. I didn't come up with the title yet. Maybe we'll throw this out here and see where it goes. So here's the game, Billy. I'm going to give you two product names. One is an actual Manscaped product, and one is not an actual Manscaped product that you can buy online. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Which one is real? The plow or the pruner?
I hope it's the plow because the pruner sounds painful.
It is the plow. It is a single blade face razor. So you nailed it. You got it right.
All right.
Yeah, the
cool.
pruner. I wondered if I could get you to bite on that. I'm going to be more clever next time.
And that was a pretty good one, but yeah, it definitely didn't bite because that was the pruner. Did not sound fun when you're talking about male grooming products. And if you are interested in getting your own Lawnmower 4.0, as I mentioned earlier in the show, or any other products that they have, feel free to go over to manscaped.com, use promo code FISHPOST, all caps, and that will give you 20% off plus free shipping.
I hope people use that promo code, and so we get to keep this Manscaped sponsorship going, because I've got a lot better ones. I mean, I've already got a full list of these. So if the people need another reason to save 20% and get free shipping, if we can keep this sponsorship, then I've got some more beauties. Certainly harder than the pruners.
Yeah, I was more excited about the free shipping than 20%, but hey, whatever. Awesome, Gary. Well, anything else we need to cover before I let you actually talk about fishing, what this podcast is actually about?
Fish photo me.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Here's a fish photo. We got Mark Otrowski with a 5.2-pound false albacore that was hooked on a gotcha plug while fishing off Johnny Mercer's pier. Good-looking fish, and one of my favorite piers to fish off of. So good job, Mark, and thanks for submitting the photo. And by the way, if you want your photo to potentially be on the podcast, feel free to send us any of your fish photos, tag us on Instagram, or send them to, I guess you can send them to podcast@fishermanspost.com. Or Gary, is there a better email that you receive photos at as well?
Photos at fishermanspost.com, podcast at Fisherman's Post. You get it to us, you get it somewhere within the Fisherman's Post realm, and we'll make sure it goes to the right spot.
Absolutely, man. Well, awesome, Gary. I look forward to this episode as I'm always excited to learn more about surf fishing. So I'll sling it back to you and let you guys do the good stuff.
All right, pay attention. Billy's best takeaway at the culmination of my talk with Wayne Ayers. Billy's best takeaway. But right now, yeah, man, I want to welcome to the show. I'm excited to welcome to the show Wayne Ayers of Real Good Surf Fishing out of Oak Island, talking about fall surf fishing with live bait on Oak Island. Wayne, welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Gary, and thank you, Billy, and the Fisherman's Post for having me. I'm very honored.
Well, don't feel honored yet. I mean, you have to wait to see how this thing goes. And so we'll take that later, but I don't know if you want to throw it out there right now. Wayne, as is tradition on the Fisherman's Post podcast with any guest, you have the tradition of 2 questions. Are you ready for your 2 questions, Wayne?
Sure.
Question number 1, why should we, or anyone for that matter, listen to anything you have to say about surf fishing?
Well, sometimes I ask myself the same question, but anyway, in any regards, I've been surf fishing for many years. I moved to Oak Island 6 years ago. I'm originally from the mountains of North Carolina, and I did a lot of lake, pond, trout fishing, bass fishing, stuff like that. And saltwater fishing has always intrigued me. I've been fishing since I've been retired in 2015. I pretty much fish as much as possible. So, and that's what got me interested in working part time at the local bait and tackle store, Oak Island Sporting Goods, here on Oak Island. And um, I saw a need to try to help people with the things that I saw them purchasing and some of the questions they asked. And I've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of reading. I've paid my dues down on the beach, and um, I just feel like I have a lot to offer.
And that is more than an acceptable answer to question number 1. We will now proceed with question number 2. Wayne, do you know how many permanent residents, according to a 2010 census, does the town of Caswell Beach have? Any
Oh,
idea?
wow. I'm going to say less than 100.
No, it's 398. I was trying to figure out whether I was going to ask you more or less than 300 or more or less than 400. But I love that you thought it was less than 100. I mean, it's not far from it. 398. I thought that was a shocking number.
Yeah, it's a small place.
Well, look, let's get to
Beautiful
the main
place.
event. Let's talk about surf fishing, live bait on Oak Island. So here's how I think I'm going to guide it a little bit. First, talk to me about when we're talking about live bait in the fall for surf fishing. What kind of live bait are you talking about? What are you mostly thinking about?
Well, we should see a few things. We should see the finger mullet start to show. Uh, they're showing um, generally late mid-August and throughout September down on the beach. There's the menhaden, or as locals call them, the pogies, will be around, but they're not always within grasp of the tide line unless you can get some in the marshy areas of the river basin, or back in the intercoastal waterway and bring them to the beach. Of course, there's live shrimp. There's sand fleas, and you can purchase bloodworms, red worms, night crawlers, and things like that.
So when we're talking about the species that most come to mind when we're talking about fall surf fishing with live bait, and again, in my mind, we're doing an overview and then we're going to get more specific. What are some of those top species that come to mind when we're talking about fall surf fishing with live bait?
Well, I'll tell you what, I get excited in the fall because I know there's an opportunity for some big redfish, some bull redfish to show up on the beach. Um, and, uh, I could go back to last year. There was so much finger mullet in the water. You could just see lines in the tide line. You could just see these squiggly lines going up and down the beach with all this finger mullet. That caused the Spanish mackerel to come in really close, and as crazy as it may sound, my neighbor across the street from me was fishing down on the beach nearby and was throwing a cast net in knee deep water, and caught almost an 18-inch Spanish mackerel in his daggum cast net. And so that's amazing to me that even happened. Of course, tore his cast net all to pieces, and but he did catch one. Um, there'll still be some pompano around. There'll be some black drum, uh, early morning and overcast days, spotted sea trout. And of course, we still have our southern kingfish, or most people call them whiting, that'll be lingering around the beach well into the winter.
Well, let's now give me an overview, please. Unless you think I'm leading this thing astray. Now give me an overview, please, of surf fishing on Oak Island, man. Maybe a little bit on beach access, just for people just to access the surf fishing on the island. But does one side of the island differ from another side of the island? The pier. I mean, what is a good general overview of how to approach Oak Island and the differences up and down the coastline?
Well, the island's kind of unique. The Brunswick county's beaches are unique in that they're south facing. Uh, we're one of the few beaches on the East Coast that actually faces due south. And that causes we don't have the structure that east face beaches have, such as natural structure like bars and drop offs and rock piles and jetties and things like that. But we do have troughs and terrain features in the surf uh, that allow us to to fish in deeper water. Um, we have some natural man-made structures. We have some piers. We have the Oak Island Pier, and we have the Ocean Crest Pier. And then for those, there may be a few of you that remember the old Long Beach Pier, which was down near 27th Street, down on the west end of the island. That at low tide, you can still see some wood, some pylons and structural things that are still there. Um, as far as you have Caswell Beach, which if you've ever come out of the Southport area and made the turn, to head towards the Lockwood Folly area, head west down the beach, you'll know you run close to Caswell Beach. A couple 100, 300 yards. We've got a little deeper water there on Caswell Beach in that channel, but then you get down around the Oak Island Pier. It starts to get a little shallow closer to the beach. Um, and then there's good accesses down around Caswell, but there's only the one parking access down at Caswell Beach. Uh, but it's real, it's real good fishing down there in many of the areas, just limited parking. Um, some of my favorite areas to fish is around the Oak Island Pier. You have some handicap access there. You have restrooms close by for the clients that I have, and down around Ocean Crest Pier, down around the 46th Street access, which is behind the town hall. Then you go further west, you go on down towards the point. Everybody on Oak Island knows about the point. You got a lot of interesting terrain things going on down at the point. You've got the ocean, you've got the Lockwood Folly River, and the intercoastal waterway that converges there, that creates different kinds of waves and currents. It allows you to fish oceanfront and then around into the inlet and around to the intercoastal side, which is all accessible by the beach.
And that is a great overview. I feel like I just learned a whole lot right off the bat as far as, understanding Oak Island terrain. And I guess now what I'm thinking is like, so fall fishing for me, I think, this is late September, this is Aaron. And so we're talking about late September and through October. If you're going to go out for a typical surf fishing day and in October, we'll just say October, but it's late September as well. Is that generally like you working two lines? Are you working three lines? Are you working just the one line? Like, what's the most popular technique either that you do or that you would recommend?
Well, without trying to be too greedy, I generally take down two rod setups. I'll fish one rod setup with some live bait, which would be the finger mullet or maybe some menhaden or pogies that are caught. I'll fish one rod setup. Yeah, I'll zone fish. I'll have one a little closer in and around the breakers and in the troughs between the breakers. I'll fish one rod really long with uh, sometimes with a live bait, sometimes with a menhaden or a dead menhaden. And generally, we'll rig that up with a Carolina rig that's set up for redfish. With a 5/0 hook, a big leader, and a weight slide. And then, if things are not moving like I want them to, or if I have some time between casts, I'll get an 8-foot rod down and do some casting with a gotcha plug or some super spooks or uh, any types of silver minnows, head and plugs, or something like that, just working it through the breakers.
All right. I wanted an overview, and now I'm going to circle back around for some more specifics. So let's start not with the long rod, whether it's live or dead bait. Let's talk with that shorter rod where you're working the troughs and some of the inside stuff. So let's start with rod and reel and line, and then take me to, one or two of your favorite rigs.
Sure. I I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people make is they've got this great big these big tall long rods with these great big fishing reels, these 6,000s, these 8,000 series reels. Um, I generally use 9, 8, 9, and 10-foot rods. I have several. Um, I like to fish the uh, the shorter rod. Generally, I like a Daiwa M cast, which I really like my Penn Battle 3 5,000 reel on that. I like that M cast because it allows me to cast up to 4 ounces, and I can because it's more of a slender rod. It's really sturdy. It allows me see the bite, feel the bite, especially with braided line. It just so much more. It's just got such a great feel to it. The other thing I do, Gary, is I'll fish a steelhead rod. Um, People look at me like I'm crazy, but sometimes instead of throwing plugs, I'll fish a steelhead rod, 9-footer with a 4,000 series reel on 12-pound test line, mono, and I'll just work around the breakers and I'll catch. I can catch supper, whiting or nice pompano. Um, uh, and so that's generally what I use with the short rods.
And then on the not the steelhead rod, but the other rod that we started talking about, is that you mentioned braid and then you mentioned mono for the steelhead? Are you using braid for the first setup?
Um, yes, yes. I do both. I use braid and mono. Um, I have several reels with my service, and so several rods and reels with my service. And on a real windy day, I won't even take braid down to the beach. I just don't have a lot of luck with the wind knots and on on a heavy wind day. So I do fish both mono and braid on the beach.
And then what about terminal tackle? What's one of your go-tos for the end of that line when you're fishing the shorter live bait rod?
Gary, I'll use pompano rigs, which I tie myself. These rigs are, about 2 feet long. I'll use a 1/0 or a size 1, or sometimes a size 2/0. Um, I like Kale hooks on the beach when I'm fishing live bait. Um, I have two setups. I have one that it's a 2-drop rig. I'll use one with just beads on it and hooks, and then and sometimes if I'm using a dead bait or shrimp or something like sand fleas, I will also use the ones I make. It has bead and floats on it, and I try to use the least amount of weight that I can to hold it in place. If I got high current days left and right, then I have to jump up on the weights.
And so dead bait, you will tend to use the float style double drop rig more?
Sure. I'll usually use 20-pound fluorocarbon line. um, like the Berkeley Vanish or the Calcutta or the Cigar, and I'll tie them myself.
And why is it that you are so fond of kale hooks?
I find with the whiting, um, and certainly some of the reds and some of the sea trout, sometimes I'll miss a bite on a circle hook. Now I appreciate circle hooks and I know what they're for, and I know how important they are, as far as is taking care of these fish and not gut hooking these fish. But sometimes, I'll miss a bite on these fish that sometimes it just kind of frustrates me. And I if I did a comparison, I think I catch more fish, or I get good solid hookups with kale hooks, than I do with circle hooks. But now when I do fish the long rod, I do fish a 5/0 circle hook, especially for those reds, because we don't want those big reds to get damaged or gut hooked.
All right, we're gonna hit up the long rod here shortly, but I'm still very much on this short rod. Um, so what do you like to put the same thing on both the top and the bottom hook? Do you mix it up? And what exactly are you looking for when you're reading the surf line, or as far as how far, how short, how long to cast that short rod?
Well, that's $1 million question, because it's just sometimes it can be very frustrating. One of the things you need to do is go down, if you have time, go down to the beach that you intend to fish at dead low tide and look at the ground, um, and see what it looks like, because it will tell a story. And generally, you can see where the high tide line is, and then you can just kind of plan your strategy. You say, okay, if I'm standing here, I need to drop it right about there, or some sort of feature that can help you identify. Um, I look in between the waves. I look for deeper water. One of the things I learned recently at one of my fishing spots is that a sandbar is developed. w- you know, when I was fishing at a high tide, I didn't realize that sandbar had shown up, and I was dropping it right on top of that sandbar when I was fishing at high tide. And so I didn't notice that until I was down at the beach recently, at low tide. So things change as far as the surf goes. But I like to drop it behind the breakers. When the tide's going out, I like to try to fish it between the breakers and look for those, or find those troughs. And then I'll just kind of fish in zones. I talked about my short rod, my long rod, and then I kind of use the one that I'm casting on a regular basis as my in between. Once I find the zone, then I know about where I need to, put my bait.
And then what kind of bait is your go-to in, say, October? What are you putting? And again, are you putting the same thing on the top and the bottom hook, or is it you mix it up?
Um, with the shorter rod, I may, if I'm using sand fleas and they're live, um, then I will use some fish bites in the sand fleas. I love the fish bites with the sand flea flavor. Um, and sometimes I'll fish the shorter rod with just a Carolina rig, with a Carolina rig with a bigger weight and a little bigger hook, um, for the short rod.
Okay. So now talk to me about the long rod. Like how big of a rod do we use when we're talking about the long rod? Same thing about reel and line. And then after that, we'll move into terminal tackle.
Yeah, for my long rod, I jumped up to a 10 foot. I really like my big water ugly stick. I've got a Battle 3, or excuse me, a Battle 2 6,000 series reel with 20-pound test on it. And generally, I will fish the long rod with 30 or 40-pound monofilament leader, generally about 14, 16 inches. Um, uh, with a heavy rated swivel, a 5/0 circle hook, and then a slider with a bead. It's Carolina rig. It's just for beach fishing. I think I mentioned it's 20 pound, 25 pound. I've got a couple rods, 20, 25-pound monofilament. The reason I like that is because it allows me to cast further. Generally, when I jump up to 30-pound in the mono range, I notice I lose some distances on my cast. And then, with braid, I'll go with 20 or 30-pound braid. Of course, you're going to always cast braid better and further, on your non-windy days. But on your windy days, I'll stick with about 20 pound monos plenty.
And man, what was the question? So for Oak Island, for that long rod, is the game get it out as far as you can? I know, the inshore rod or the short rod sometimes casts a little bit farther, sometimes not. But with the big rod, is it always the game is get it out as far as you can?
Yeah, I kind of, I'll get it out when I guess my first cast when I'm feeling good and I'm not tired and I've got a little spunk. I'll really sling that sucker and see if I can get it out as far as I can. Um, and if I'm not having any luck in there, then maybe I'll try a different zone from where I'm standing. Um, and so I try to get it out past the breakers where I think the deeper water may be. Of course, I can also see bait running, and if I see bait running closer to me or further away, or birds or something like that, then I'll target those areas. So I look for clues, and that just kind of helps me to to decide where to drop the weight.
And what makes up your mind on the long rod, whether or not you're going to put a live bait on there or a cut bait on there?
Well, you know, you don't ever keyhole yourself into one bait when you go surf fishing. I see people do that all the time. And so, if it's not working for me, generally your finger mullet are going to work for you. Something's going to go get those things, whether it's a bluefish or shark or it could be a trout, could be a big red. Um, then then certainly I'll work it. If that's it's match the hatch. You hear fly fishermen talk about that, and that's what these big redfish are feeding up for the wintertime, and they're just inhaling these finger mullet. And so but sometimes they may like a pogey or a big fat menhaden. And if I got it, I'm gonna try it.
Um, so the question that came to mind is I am intrigued to catch a Spanish on a live bait. And so you're typically hooking the Spanish on these live baits on the bottom. Is that what happens? And it could happen, as you just said, I think if it could happen in a cast net, it could happen on the short rod, or it could certainly happen on the long rod.
It absolutely could. One of the things you could do, what I have done in the past, is I'll fish a live bait rig. It looks like a king mackerel rig, but it's shorter and a little smaller than a king mackerel live bait rig. With the O'Shaughnessy hook on the front and the treble hook on the back with a little shorter wire leader. Um, is put that out there and just let it live line. Uh, you know, if you try to put it out there with a balloon or you try to put it out there on a float um, on the beach, it's difficult because the wind can hamper your cast. And so you can even put it on that slider rig with a lighter weight. So the Carolina type rig and with that same wire um, live bait rig and let that guy swim around. And if there's a Spanish there, he's not going to miss that opportunity to inhale that bait.
Well, man, I think I'm going to transition because I certainly looked at this immediately in our show notes, and it is the final category of what you might be doing wrong or what you might be doing right. And I think you actually had a better way of wording it, and I'm just going off of my like cheap notes here. But let's start that section of the show. What you might be doing wrong, what you might be doing right. What do you have for us, Wayne?
Well, I think the main thing, Gary, is to manage your own expectations. Every time we go fishing, we want to catch a fish of a lifetime. I get that. I'm guilty of that too. Um, but if we can shorten our gear, if we can shorten our rods, we can lighten up our line a little bit. Maybe use a little smaller reel um, and go down. If you're going with your family, go down with the expectation that we're going to have a good time. We're going to fish. We're going to teach the youngins how to fish. We're going to experience that. Um, we're not always going to catch the fish of a lifetime at the beach. Yes, you may catch it, and I've caught a couple of nice fish at the beach, and I'm really stoked when I do. But when I go down there, I just got to manage my expectations that they're not always there. The other thing that I would, fish the troughs, fish a little closer in. You don't always have to cast that guy out as far as it could go. So manage your expectations and try to be a little more um, in tune with what you're doing, and looking, am I covering as much water as possible where these fish are? The other thing I would say to you is everybody goes down, they plant their sand spikes, they plant their beach carts, they plant their chairs and their umbrellas, and they just they don't move. And if there's no fish where you fished at for an hour, hour and a half, don't be afraid to pick that stuff up and just move. It could be a simple move of 100 yards. It might be 50 yards in either direction to see if you can find these fish, because these fish don't hang out in one location.
I like that list. And while you were giving me this list, I was thinking to myself, man, what else would I want to pick up from this guy and not learn on my own, but actually pick up from this podcast? So how about this question? Aside from rods, reels, sand spikes, terminal tackle, what are some gear items that it absolutely you want to have out there and you're going to wish you had it if you forget it? What have you found through the years that is a must pack when you're going out there surf fishing?
Well, of course, I have this guide service that I do. I you've got to have pliers. You've got to have a bucket. You've got to have some needle nose pliers, maybe a hook removal tool. You've got to have some rags or a pair of gloves. You need sunscreen. You need water. You need extra tackle, and so you got to. I'm still experimenting with all the things that I take to the beach. Sometimes I think, Wayne, I'm taking too much to the beach, because when I'm trying to drag this cart over this dune, it just doesn't seem to get any lighter. But you know, um, I try to. There's times when I will go to the beach with just a 5 gallon bucket and a 7 or 8 foot rod, and just work the beach with gulp or bucktails, or with plugs. And there's times when I go and I'll go loaded for bear. I'm taking all my bait, and I'm taking my cart, sunscreen, water, and I always take a cold beer, because if I catch a really nice fish, I'm going to celebrate with that cold beer.
All right, I got one more question, because we were talking about live bait. Best system for keeping live bait alive out on the beach?
I've seen a couple things done. Certainly, certainly the traditional way with a 5 gallon bucket and aerator, with replenishing the water is going to be one of the ways that you can do it. Finger mullet get really stressed in a bucket, and they're going to start dying off pretty quick. Don't throw them away, because you can you can use them, and you can freeze them, and you can use them for bait later if you can't catch any. Ingall makes a nice thermos type um, bait container now that's got the rechargeable aerator that you can plug up and not have to use batteries when you get home. But my go-to thing is that 5 gallon bucket, and with a lid and a aerator. So I've seen people throw the old yellow and white or the red and white bait you know trolling buckets out in the surf, but they're going to come right back to you, so that you're constantly messing with that. So the 5 gallon bucket, Gary, that's the way to go.
Well, man, this has been a good and I think productive, successful talk about fall surf fishing on Oak Island. Got to know you more, got to know about real good surf fishing more. But before I say goodbye, just going to set you up. Any final thoughts? Anything I didn't ask? I didn't set up with a question? Anything that comes to mind that you'd like to get out in your podcast before we say goodbye, Wayne?
Yeah. Again, I would like to thank you and Billy and the Fisherman's Post for having me. I'm very humbled by this experience. I guess what I would say to people is, surf fishing can be a lot of work. It can be a lot of fun. It's a great family. It's a great family event if you got, so much things going down on the beach. Some people like myself, Gary, I can't go just sit on the beach and just sit there. I like to go fishing. I like to go walking around. I like to see what's going on. And so, it's a good event for the kids. It's a good time had by all. Um, and it is, if you're on Oak Island, you want to learn how to surf fish, I'd love to have you. If if you're on Oak Island, and you don't have all the equipment and you just want to, you want to go fishing, then I'm available for that as well. But go out there and have a real good time.
Amen. I love it, Wayne. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed this talk. Billy.
All right, man. I love talking about surf fishing.
Me too, man. I'm excited. I love the fall surf fishing. I mean, I love getting reunited with our surf fishing tournament anglers, man. They're good, such good people, such good weekends. And yeah, man, the fishing is special too. So with that set up, Billy's best takeaway. I've got two, and I'm wondering if you hit on either of my two.
Well, I was actually just taking notes here on my notes app, and I was pretty curious, about a lot of stuff that he said. But the one thing that I always lack at is what in the world do I take to the beach? What do I take fishing? And so I just made a list of pliers, bucket, hook removal tool, gloves, water, sunscreen, additional tackle, and a cold beer. I put all those down because that's always, I always get to the beach and I'm like, man, I forgot this, I forgot that. And so I literally put in my notes as a little checklist for tomorrow morning when I get up and go hunt for some tarpon here in Puerto Rico. It's going to be on my list.
Well, that was one of my two. The cold beer was one of my two takeaways.
That was your number one takeaway.
In fact, I'm going to start doing that for podcasts. I'm going to start packing a cold beer. So if I feel like I really did a good job, if I did a good job as host, then I'm going to have my cold beer at the end. And then the other one, man, Wayne won me over early in the podcast, man. You got someone that says dad gum, as in that dad gum Spanish, messed up that, in a cast net, but you won me over already, man. Wayne had me at dad gum. It was that simple.
That's funny, man. Dude, that story about Spanish in a cast net reminds me of that time you and I are fishing. I can't remember who we were fishing with, but we were, I think it was like bonita fishing, and there's these two older guys with a big cast net. Do you remember this? And they were like throwing the cast net out. They're like running up on these school of bonita, and they're like trying to throw a cast net on them.
Yeah.
Do you remember that story?
And they had no shot at that. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I would have just like, please get that on there. Please just hook one of those things in there. It would be the funniest thing ever. Anyway, it's like those two grumpy old men like trying to. Anyway, and that's what that reminded me of. I was sitting there laughing on the inside, but yeah, man, I got my checklist, got my surf fishing checklist, which I always forget stuff. So, that's a resource, man. That's a real valuable resource. So appreciate him sharing that. And really appreciate all of our sponsors making this possible. We got Marine Warehouse Center, it's located in Wellington, a location there in Charleston. So no matter if you're in North, South Carolina, and they ship worldwide. We got RA Hitch up in Raleigh, Apex area, serving the outdoor community. So if you need your anything, man, they got everything on that website. So go check those guys out.
Luggage racks, man. I'm big on luggage racks these days. I'm still big on luggage racks.
I know, man. I think you mentioned that in an episode before, and I'm like, yeah. So you can haul all your groceries home for your boys. That's a new sales pitch Chris hasn't thought about yet.
Congratulations on Manscaped, Billy.
Yeah,
I'm impressed.
Dude, they're a great company, and they have a lot of fun, and so we're having a lot of fun with them. So once again, if you guys are interested in Manscaped, go to manscaped.com, promo code FishPost, and get 20% off and free shipping. And also for RA Hitch, get $20 off by saying, "Hey, the Fish Post guy sent me." Just go to the front desk when you're checking out, and you'll get $20 right there. Easy peasy.
And it's all supporting the podcast. You're helping yourself out, and you're supporting the podcast at the same time.
And if you're really want to get discounts anywhere in town, just say, "Hey, the Fisherman's Post guy sent me, told me I get some kind of discount."
It might work.
Hey, you never know until you ask, right?
I'm going to try it. I'm gonna try it tomorrow. I'm gonna go to Starbucks and say, I Fish Post. I get 20% off my Bente.
They'd be like, I don't know. I just heard a podcast. Oh man, too much fun. Well, all right, Gary. I think people are well equipped to go surf fishing and catch that fish of their dreams. And it's cool that we're part of their story and part of their journey. And if you are getting value from this show, feel free to leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're on Apple, hit that little review button. Let us know what you think about the show. And I'll get back in the routine of maybe reading some of those off. So go ahead and leave a review.
Okay.
Let us know what you think. And Gary, we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for everything.
Fisherman's